Welcome to this episode of Inspiring Transformation on Jambo Radio, where we focus on sharing real human story. I remain your co-host on Inspiring Transformation, Dino Loman. And on this episode, we will be listening to Mr. Francesco Ocansey's story. Francesco, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for wanting to share your amazing story with our listeners.
Okay,
First,
thank you very much.
you're welcome. Firstly, you were born in Italy. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How was it like growing up in Italy, considering you are from a black heritage?
So this was somewhere around 1992. So I was born in 1992, and I actually didn't, you know, I didn't have that infancy, like growing up over there, because I was in Italy, from birth to the age of 3, and then for some reason my parents decided to take me back to Africa. So I went back to Ghana when I was 3 years old, and I came back to Italy when I was 16. So right, I didn't get that childhood, and also that that adolescent stage. I didn't get that opportunity to experience that in Italy. But then after I came back to Italy when I was 16, uh, I mean, yeah, I was still young. So living in Italy was a bit. It had, just like everywhere, it's got its own pros and cons, and there's a lot I can say about it. So I mean, it was all right. It was all right.
All right, Francesco, let's just kind of like fast forward a little bit forward.
Okay.
When did you actually arrive in the UK?
So I came to the UK in 2014. Yes, 2014.
And why the move from Italy to the UK at that time?
So the reason why I actually decided to no, the reason why actually myself and my family we decided to move here was because one, my older brother was living here in London. He was living in London. So and also before he moved to the UK, he lived in Italy for a bit. So he actually understands, how the situation is like living in Italy. So he was the one forcing us, to relocate here. But then living in Italy with my mom, my stepdad, and also my sister. My stepdad never worked for like 6 years, and things were very tough over there. It was just my mom working throughout, the 6 years, and she was feeding other three people. I would say other three adults. She was paying rent, providing food, clothing, everything for 6 good years. It was just her. So my other brother actually convinced her, you know, to um, to relocate here. So once we do relocate here, things will get much better. I can be working to support her. My sister can be working. My stepdad will be working. So it got to a point that things were not getting better in Italy. So my mom decided to, we have to relocate, and that was it. And we all agreed because we all knew how the situation was in Italy, and it wasn't getting any better. Opportunities were very slim, especially for people of color, and for people of coming from the ethnic minorities. It was very very difficult. So yeah, that was the reason why we had to move to the UK.
Just to kind of like understand, were you scared having to move over from Italy to another country and then having to I'm pretty sure you were speaking Italian, now having to come here where you need to speak English? How was that like? Was there any element of fear,
Uh,
or
um,
were you
uh, uh,
excited?
yeah, I would say I was excited because before moving here, I actually had the opportunity to visit my brother. So I actually visited my brother somewhere around 2012 during the Olympics. So I lived in the UK for almost 3 weeks. I was living with him in London. So I had like some sort of feeling, living here for 3 weeks. It was short, but I could see that this place was very different compared to Italy. So, and also when you talk about the language barrier was never a problem for me because I actually spent most of my my schooling, I would say, in Africa, in Ghana, which we in school we do speak English. So the language was never an issue. The language was actually an issue when I came back from Ghana to Italy, because when I came back, I couldn't speak, any word of Italian. The only thing I could say was maybe hi, hello, and stuff like that. So that was a challenge. I sat in the classroom with teachers and my other schoolmates that couldn't speak any English. I sat in the classroom with them, learning with them. Whether they talking about me, whether they saying stuff about me, I don't know. I'm just sat there, and this was my situation for like 3 years until I started, you know, getting the language, and I started, speaking it gradually. So yeah, I would say I was excited. Yeah, I was excited moving here.
Okay. So, can you tell our listeners what you've been doing since you arrived in the UK? Can you just kind of like summarize to our listeners what you've been doing and the things you've been involved in since you moved over to the UK?
Okay, so when I moved to the UK, I remember my first job I got after 2 weeks was I was doing some leafleting jobs. So I was doing leafleting almost every day for 6 hours, and every day I got paid £20. And this guy used to pay me like every Friday. And I remember there's a time that it was just myself that was working doing this job, and I quite remember that there was a time that the family was depending on me to bring home that £100 or so that I get from doing this leafleting, and there was no money at home. So when I brought that money home, there was some sort of joy, So straight away I had to shower. I went to the supermarket, bought some food stuff and stuff like that, because there was nothing at home. Literally everybody was just waiting for me to come home with that £100. So my first job I was doing leafleting, and then I got a job. I got another job doing. I was a waiter, and also I've done some security jobs. I've worked in warehouses, and I just decided to go back to school, because when we decided to move here into the UK, I actually told myself that, look, I think I'm done with education. I'm just going to work, But then for some reason, I just decided to further my education. So yeah.
You actually mentioned education. Can you highlight to our listeners your journey of actually attending university in the UK, or how did you go back into school? How did that process work? Because I'm pretty sure there could be someone listening to you right now and they're just thinking about going to school, but they don't really know how the process works, considering you were coming over from Italy. So can you just elaborate on that aspect for our listeners to know the journey to education?
Yeah, sure. So what happened was I remember speaking to one of my friends that, look, I actually want to further my education, but then I don't have any other interest apart from sports. And he was like, oh yeah, when you go to Leicester College, so they do hold like open days and stuff like that. Just go there, speak to anybody at all, let them know what you want to do, and I'm sure there's somebody that could guide you. So that was what happened. I actually went to Leicester College during one of the open days. I think what happened was I sent them an email first, and they got back to me with the date. So I went um, for the open day, and I spoke to there's a guy. I met one of the guys that I spoke to them, and I actually explained to him that, look, I just want to do something in sports, and then he actually told me what sort of courses that they doing in the sporting field. But then the course that I chose, so I was doing level 3 BTech sports. So it kind of had everything in it. So it had like physiology, it had like physical education, it had like everything combined. So I was like, yeah, this seems like something that I'll be interested in doing. But bear in mind, back in Italy, I was doing engineering. So this was like a very huge transition from engineering to um, to sports. And also back in Italy, I never enjoyed engineering anyway, because it was my mom that she actually forced me to do engineering, because the person that I was named after he was an engineer. So that's the whole moral story of it. So I mean, yeah. So my journey was quite straightforward. I just sent them an email. They go back to me with the dates of when I need to attend the open day, and I went there, spoke to somebody, got forms, filled the forms, and that was pretty much it, to be honest.
So you've studied in the university in the UK, am I correct?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Um,
So
can you just highlight some of the challenges or the experience of studying in the UK in the university?
okay, so before the university, I actually did one year in college. So after 1 year, I decided to apply for a university that has a campus in Wembley, Wembley Stadium, which is called UCFB, or University College of Football Business. And this university is kind of affiliated to Buckinghamshire University. So they kind of get their exams and qualification certificate, everything from Buckinghamshire University. So I applied, and I was lucky that I was offered I think it was a conditional offer. So there were certain criteria that I was supposed to meet, and luckily I met those criteria, and I got in. Getting into the university itself wasn't an issue. It wasn't a big deal. Bearing in mind that I just relocated from Italy because the university wanted to know that whether I was actually good with the language. So they made me, write some English exam at college, just to just they can they can confirm that, yeah, I'm actually good with the language. So I did that. I think that was a level 3 English and maths, I think. So I did that. I passed that one, and then yeah, everything was nice and smooth, and I got into university, and that was where the challenges began with my student finance.
Um,
Student, yeah.
okay, thank you very much for sharing that. You mentioned you had some challenges with student finance.
Yeah,
Would that be something that you would like to share to our listeners, if what the
yeah, yeah,
challenges,
yeah. Why not?
how you overcame those challenges, and how you were able to cope at that point where how you were able to still study with those challenges with student finance? How did you go about? How did you manage all that?
Yeah, all right, thank you. So, talking about student finance, I can actually write a whole book about student finance. Like, it was pretty hectic, and it was mind blowing. So I'll start from how I did my application. So because at the time I haven't lived in the UK for more than 3 years or so, I had to apply through by using my mom's document. So I had to use my mom's document to support myself, through my application. So I applied as a child of a migrant worker. So with that, you have to be showing student finance that you solely depend on your mom, especially when it comes to money. So the application, everything was fine, but then when it got to the time for me to get the funding from student finance, there came the issues that there's no evidence that my mom supports me financially. Because I was working on the side I was a waiter at the time, so I had some money coming in for myself as well. So they were asking me, like, what am I doing to support myself? And I'll just tell them, look, I work on the side. It's not like a full-time job. And because at that time I was doing more than 16 hours a week, and also there was no evidence that my mom was supporting me financially. That is, they wanted to see some sort of payment coming from my mom's account into my account, or they wanted to see something that showed that, yes, I fully depend on my mom for money. My birth in mind at that time, I was like 23. I'm not 17 or 16. So we had, like, it was crazy. So my application got rejected whilst I was at uni, and this was around, so university starts in September, so my application got rejected somewhere around December. So bear it in mind, I was still in the fight with them from September to December, and then December it got rejected. So when it got rejected, I remember I got really, really frustrated with myself. And at that time, to my university started giving me pressure that by February, if I don't sort this out, they'll have no option than to, kick me out of uni. And that wasn't the only issue that I had. My accommodation was also on my neck. Because I remember first year I was living in the student accommodation in Wembley called Victoria Hall. Yeah. So I think for the whole year, the accommodation was around 9 grand or something like that. But then we had some support from the university, so I think the university was paying like 3 grand or something like that for us. So we were just paying like 6 grand, which is still a lot. But at the time, we were still fresh at uni. We just wanted our own space and whatnot. So we just wanted, myself and including some of my friends, we just wanted to have like student accommodation. So these accommodation guys were on my neck. Student finance was also giving me hell, and my university was also stressing me. And even the worst of it all was my mom, because I was not even stressed for myself, because she was the one that was stressing a lot. She was stressing a lot, and I mean, to cut a long story short, in February it got approved because student finance actually made me aware that in order for me to receive the funding, they need to see some sort of evidence that my mom supports me financially. So we actually came up with a plan that every 2 weeks or so, my mom will put, or every week or two, my mom will put like 50 pound or 100 pound into my account. That will be transferred from her account into my account. And then I'll just take the money out. Then I'll send it back to my mom again, and she'll put the money in. So we kept rotating the same money for like, I don't know how many months. I wasn't spending that money. Like, we were just doing that so that we kind of have some sort of evidence, to prove to student finance that she's actually supporting me financially. So we got that, and then I printed my statement. I got my mom's statement as well, and then we had to send that over to student finance. And then in February, so bear it in mind, actually, the university ends the year ends in April. I got my student finance in February, so I got my student finance 2 months for the year to end. And this is my first year.
Wow.
So
Was there a time where you wanted to give up, considering?
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I even gave up. I even gave up already. It was just through some of my good friends at uni, and also some of the guys that I spoke to at my university, that dealt with student issues and stuff like that. So those were the guys that always made sure that I was okay. I mean, I had friends that were willing to borrow me money whenever I needed. My elder brother was supporting, my sister as well was supporting, my mom definitely, and I was also working on the side as well. But those monies they were never enough, because bear in mind, you're paying like 9 grand for student accommodation, and you're paying another 9 grand for your tuition fee, and all these monies that I was getting on the side, they were not enough at all. But
So what actually kept you going? Like, even though you wanted to give up, I know you've mentioned you had friends that were supporting you, you had your brother supporting you, family, but what is that thing that kept you going, that kept you pushing?
I would say faith. I would say faith, and God. I would say God, really, because if it's not God, like, because you can clearly see that there's no way, you know you can see there's a stumbling block there that, as for this, you can't jump it, but then for some reason you kept, like, I kept going, like, I kept, it got to a time that, like, I just, told myself, whatever happens, happens. Like, if these guys want to kick me out, they should just kick me out. You know, I just, and then I just, left everything to God. Whatever happens, happens. That was it, really. I mean, and I remember, I mean, I'm a believer, but you wouldn't see me, I'm not the type that, you see me blasting a lot of prayers and stuff like that. But I just say a few words in my head, and I keep on going. And God really answered my prayers because it was a tough time. It was a tough time.
What advice would you give someone listening to the challenges you face while you were at university with student finance? What advice will you give someone that might be going through the same thing, or someone that is planning to apply? What advice will you give them? Will you tell them to keep going, or will you tell them to have faith, like
Yeah.
actually did?
So one, I would tell them to have faith. Two, I would say they need to get information. So there were certain things that I never knew, and if I knew certain things before, I'm sure that I wouldn't have gone through certain applications. I would have maybe done something different. So I would say if you listen to me and you're actually thinking of applying for student finance, or you know that there might be some issues, I would say, get informed. You need to speak to people that have been through it. You can actually call student finance and ask them, what you need to do. You don't have to just you know get any other information from anywhere. Just people are doing the same thing, so you want to do the same thing as well. Because your situation might be different from someone else's situation. So I would say information is very, very, very key. Because, for example, for my situation, when I realized that even for my second year, I still had issues, but in the third year, I knew what was going on. So instead of me getting my funding in January or February, I got it in somewhere around the ending of November. So even that was still late, but at that time I knew what they were looking for. So I kind of anticipated, whatever they were going to ask me, and somehow I got my funding earlier. So I would say have faith, and also you have to be informed. You need to get the right information from the right people.
All right, Francesco. I see you now work in the financial sector.
Yes.
Can you kind of elaborate us in the transition from
Um,
what into that sector?
yeah. So what happened was after university, so I actually graduated in I got a BA in sports business and sports law, and after university, I realized that the field that I wanted to go into wasn't that easy, because you actually need to be connected. You have to know people. You have to be out there. Because it's a very how should I even put it? It looks very huge out there, but it's a very small world. Once you get into it, you realize that everybody knows everybody. That's how small the football world is. So, I mean, I was just home one day, still looking for jobs after uni. I ended up doing some warehouse jobs and stuff like that. But then I just told myself that maybe I should just, broaden my feathers a bit. I should just start looking at other opportunities. I shouldn't just limit myself to, being a sports agent, or just working in the sports sector. Maybe I can get something else going on. However, I can be doing my sports work on the side as well. So, luckily, through my sister, she had a friend that was working at Deloitte at the time. And if you know Deloitte, they one of the top four consulting firms in the world. So this friend of hers actually got in touch saying that Deloitte is recruiting for graduates. So I was like, okay, cool, because at the moment I'm working at Amazon doing some warehouse job, which I hated. Anytime that it was time for me to go to work, it was really painful. So I applied for the Deloitte role, and luckily I got called for an interview, and I got it. So I worked at Deloitte for like 8 months, and then from there I joined Lloyds Bank doing PPI stuff. So over there I worked there for almost a year, and then after that, after since Corona kicked in, this pandemic actually kicked in. Things got a bit messier, and unfortunately, some of us we were laid off work. So luckily, my agency, actually found something else for me to do, and that was another job with Barclays. So as of now, I'm in training with Barclays. and that doesn't really. I mean, I'm still doing the football stuff. I'm still doing my sporting stuff on the side. So I have a friend that he's got his own agency, and he's got academy players, Spurs. He's got academy players um, in the lower divisions, like the League 1, League 2 clubs. He's got players in the academies there as well, and he's got a ladies football player that actually plays for England as well. So I'll be working with him on the side, aside my job that I'm doing. So I've been doing some scouting work and stuff like that. So I've not actually made that transition yet. I'm still doing both. Still
How
doing
do
both.
you manage your time having to do both things? How do you manage the time? How do you
Nowadays, like with the help of technology and also with the help of our mobile phones and stuff like that, everything can be done. You know, everything can be done within a split second on your phone or with technology and stuff like that. Professional contracts are being signed over the phone, fax, stuff like that. Like, for example, what happened with the Gallo deal? Like, Gallo was in China, and Man United needed his services, but then everything was done on the phone. Everything was done on the phone, and even like, Igalo wasn't even in the country yet, and this was just hours before the transfer deadline. So what I'm trying to say is, I tend to do most of my work on the phone, speaking to people, setting up meetings and stuff like that. And on the weekends, when I can, I do some scouting. I go watch some academy games. And yeah, that's it pretty much.
Thank you very much, Francesco. What life lessons have you learned so far? Because seems to you've had quite a journey. What are some of the life lessons that you've learned?
Um, so life lessons. I would say we just have to be grateful. If you're alive, you just have to be grateful, because there are people that go through similar situations, and they don't pull through. They don't get out of it. So if we are alive and kicking, you just have to be grateful, and also we just have to also remain humble. You know, because some situations that you go through at times, is just maybe God letting you know that you just need to be humble in certain things. You know, because at times, many a times we achieve certain things in life, and we think that it's just by our might and power, but I mean it's not that. People go to bed and they just still wake up. So I would say we have to be grateful for life, and just be humble. You know, just be humble.
Is there anything you think you want to share that I must have I've forgotten or I've missed?
Um, I mean, now we all know the situation with racism and stuff going on now, and it's crazy with the protests and stuff in America. I mean, I've been abused myself in loads. I can't even count, like, countless times in Italy. Like, it's crazy. Racism is actually a thing. It's happening. It's not like it's something of the past. It's still happening. So back in Italy, I used to play football. So I was playing at a decent level, like in academy level. I was playing at a decent level, and at times, you go to the games and you have parents of other kids, screaming at you, especially when you go into a tackle and stuff like that. You know, go to your country, you monkey, this, that. We hear all of that. But the thing is, we kind of we kind of grew into it, even though that shouldn't be it. But we saw it as, it is what it is. This is reality here. I mean, you could, back in Italy, I remember you could be walking on the streets and people would just call police on you, just like that. Because they've seen a black person walking here. Like, it's crazy the amount of times that you get police, stopping you, asking for your documents and stuff. You've not done anything wrong. You're just walking on the street. You know, so I would say to my my fellow black people that are listening, that we shouldn't give up on this. It's going to be a long, 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 long way to go, but in the end, I'm sure that we're going to win. We're going to win. Yeah.
How good is your Italian?
Yeah, I would say it's good. It's good because actually, after I moved back to Italy. I studied in Italy for 6 years before moving to the UK. Everything was done in Italian in the school, So my first 2 years, I couldn't speak a thing. I was just there. But for some reason, I managed to get promoted to the next class, to the next class, to the next class. I don't know how I did it, but yeah, I would say yeah, my Italian is quite decent. Yeah.
Can you say some few words in Italian for our listeners?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say so now that we're living in a very particular moment, with this coronavirus thing, I would say something in Italian regarding that. So, ok, so stiamo vivendo in un momento molto molto particolare, quindi vi prego di stare a casa e lavate le mani per almeno 20 secondi e seguite tutte le regole e speriamo che andrà tutto bene.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francesco, and I'm really grateful you accepted to come on the show. It's been a pleasure listening to you, and it's been fantastic hearing your inspiring transformation story. I will say that's it for now. Keep listening to Jambo Radio.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jambo Radio. And also thank you for what you're doing as well. You're doing a great job, and hopefully we'll see much more better things coming out from Jambo Radio.
Thank you very much, Francesco. I really do appreciate it. Back.
All right. Thank you.
On your mobile phone and on all social media platforms, Jambo Radio.